From the very first moment the woman stepped into the restaurant, the whispers began, soft, sharp, and cutting like tiny blades. People didn't even try to hide it. They stared at her thrift store dress, her worn-out shoes, the tired way she carried her shoulders. But the most painful part wasn't the comments. It was the look on her blind date's face, a look that said she never should have come. And as she stood there, clutching the strap of her old purse, wondering if she should turn around and leave, something unexpected happened. A tiny chair scraped loudly across the marble floor, and a little girl, no more than 5, climbed onto it, pointed her small finger at the nanny, and said words that made the entire restaurant fall silent. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the beauty of unexpected grace, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more stories that touch the heart. Her name was Grace Turner, a 26-year-old nanny who had spent most of her life taking care of other people's children while barely managing to take care of herself. Life hadn't been easy. Her mother passed away when Grace was 19, leaving her to juggle 2 part-time jobs and night school. Her dreams of becoming a teacher slowly faded under the weight of overdue bills and responsibilities she never asked for. Yet she carried a gentleness about her, one that made kids cling to her instantly and elders smile without realizing it. The blind date had been arranged by a coworker from the daycare center where she worked. Grace didn't usually agree to such things, but her coworker insisted, saying the man was decent, polite, and looking for someone genuine. So she gathered what little confidence she had, borrowed a simple necklace from her neighbor, and walked into the restaurant hoping, just once, something good might happen to her. But the moment she saw Mark, her date, adjusting his expensive watch and wiping invisible dust off his designer shirt, she knew she had made a mistake. He didn't stand to greet her. He didn't smile. His eyes traveled from her face to her shoes with a slow, judgmental sweep. She froze, feeling the weight of his disappointment before he even opened his mouth. Around them, people snickered quietly, whispering comments she couldn't fully hear but fully felt. Her cheeks burned. Her heart sank. Yet before she could retreat, a tiny voice cut through the tension. A little girl with curly brown hair, wearing a pastel coat and holding a stuffed bunny, toddled forward. She climbed onto the chair next to Grace's table and declared loudly, "That's her. That's the lady I told you about. Daddy, that's the nice nanny who helped me when I got lost at the park." The restaurant turned to stone. Grace blinked, and so did Mark, though for very different reasons. But the girl wasn't looking at Mark, she was pointing toward a tall man walking in behind her. A man whose presence seemed to hush the room instantly. That man was Jonathan Brooks, one of the youngest CEOs in Denver, a name that carried both prestige and mystery in the business world. He looked momentarily confused, then his expression softened when he recognized Grace. Jonathan had met her only once, very briefly. A month earlier, he had been on an urgent phone call while pushing his daughter in a stroller. The call distracted him long enough for little Harper to wander toward the playground gate. Grace had gently intercepted her, keeping her safe until Jonathan rushed back. He thanked her hurriedly and left, never expecting to see her again. But Harper hadn't forgotten. She remembered everything, the way Grace crouched down to her height, the way she soothed her fears, the way she gave her a flower she had picked earlier. Now, Harper tugged on her father's sleeve and insisted, "Daddy, she's the one. She's the good one." Mark scoffed, shaking his head, muttering something about wrong place, wrong people, and stood up as if he couldn't be seen sitting next to someone like Grace. His arrogance lingered in the air long after he walked out. Grace wanted to disappear, but Jonathan offered a small, apologetic smile and said she didn't deserve to be treated that way. He invited her to sit with them, insisting it would make Harper's evening. Hesitant but moved by the girl's excitement, Grace agreed. What began as a humiliating night slowly turned into something unexpectedly warm. Harper talked nonstop, reciting every memory she had of the day Grace helped her. Jonathan listened, genuinely interested, and every now and then glanced at Grace with thoughtful curiosity. There was something calming and humbling about the way she interacted with his daughter. She wasn't performing. She wasn't pretending. She simply cared. Over the next few weeks, Grace found her path crossing with Jonathan and Harper more often than chance could explain. Sometimes at the park. Sometimes at a cafe near her workplace. Once at the grocery store where she was comparing prices on cereal brands. Each encounter left a quiet imprint, small moments that felt meaningful even if she didn't allow herself to hope for anything more. Jonathan began asking her questions, not just small talk, but real ones about her life, her dreams, her fears. Grace answered cautiously, afraid of exposing too much, but his sincerity slowly chipped away at her hesitations. Life, however, had a way of testing her. The daycare she worked at announced budget cuts and layoffs. Grace was one of the newer hires, and despite the parents loving her, she was among the first to be let go. The news crushed her. She already struggled financially. She had no backup plan, no safety net. The next few weeks became a storm of failed job applications, skipped meals, and sleepless nights filled with quiet despair. One evening, while she sat on a bench outside her old workplace trying not to cry, a familiar voice called her name. Jonathan. He had come looking for her after Harper mentioned Grace wasn't at the daycare anymore. Grace tried to smile, tried to pretend everything was fine, but her exhaustion gave her away. Jonathan didn't pry. Instead, he asked if she would consider working for him, not as a pity gesture, but as Harper's nanny, officially. Harper adored her, he trusted her, and the job came with good pay, stability, and a supportive environment. Grace was overwhelmed. Part of her feared taking such a role would complicate things. But another part, the part that hadn't dared hope for anything in years, felt an unexpected peace. She accepted. Working for Jonathan wasn't just a job. It became a turning point. She created routines for Harper, brought laughter back into their large house, and unknowingly brought warmth into Jonathan's structured, lonely life. He admired her compassion, her humility, her ability to find beauty in ordinary moments. Grace saw sides of him the world didn't, his quiet grief over losing his wife years ago, his fears of failing as a father, his longing for something real and grounding. Somewhere between bedtime stories and shared coffee conversations, something delicate began to grow. Something neither of them voiced but both felt deeply. Yet Grace, still haunted by her past struggles, always kept emotional distance. She didn't believe she belonged in a world like Jonathan's. Everything changed the night of Jonathan's corporate gala. He insisted Grace and Harper attend, not as employees, but as guests. Grace reluctantly agreed, borrowing a simple dress again, hoping she wouldn't embarrass anyone. When she arrived, some of the high society guests recognized her from the blind date incident. Whispers returned. Sneers curled. People judged her clothes, her background, the fact that she came with the CEO. But before insecurity could swallow her, Harper pulled her into the center of the room and said loudly, "Daddy said you're family. And family sits with us." Silence fell. Jonathan moved to Grace's side, placing a gentle hand on her back, a gesture of protection, not possession. He spoke quietly, but his voice carried across the room. He said he respected Grace more than anyone there, that her kindness had rebuilt his daughter's joy, and that no amount of wealth could compare to the goodness she carried. For the first time, Grace didn't shrink. She didn't run. She stood tall, tears brimming, realizing she wasn't alone anymore. If this story is touching your heart, please like, comment, and share. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories to life. Soon after, the world around them shifted. Grace found herself embraced not just by Harper, but by Jonathan's friends and trusted employees. She returned to her studies part-time, supported by Jonathan's encouragement. And as months went by, the bond between her and Jonathan grew into something undeniable, something steady and beautifully unexpected.